Hello everyone, it's dragonplatinum here, and welcome to the Plain Crazy Building Competition number 2. This video was a lot of fun to make, and unlike the first competition, this one has all 9 finalists present. Now, just before we begin, I'm going to do a quick run through of my marking criteria on how I determine my scores. There are 3 criteria like last time, along with a new 4th one to help with some tiebreakers. To start things off, design. This will be the overall look of the build, along with how nice the paint job kinda complements it. Next up is difficulty. This is pretty similar to design, but it's all about how big and complicated I think that the build is. After that is handling. This will be mostly about making sure that the boat moves, turns, and generally just functions, although this will be a little hard due to the lag that a lot of these boats create. And finally, the new category for tiebreakers, originality. This is mostly only about how original I think the idea is, and I'll be using a lot of the builds I saw submitted along with my own thoughts as comparison to determine, is this an idea not a lot of people do or one that a lot of people end up building. Now with all that said and out of the way, let's get to the boats. First up is Dead Accurate's modern aircraft carrier. This ship was large and functional. This aircraft carrier could easily do its job, allowing helicopters or any other aircraft for that matter to come and land on it. Design-wise, I thought it was pretty cool. However, I felt as though more could have been done with the area underneath the boat. I understand that obviously it needs to be relatively barren down there for other builds to fit in, and that makes sense. But I felt a little more detail couldn't have hurt. Difficulty-wise, this thing was impressive. Not only was it large with a block count just over 5,000, but it also had a working elevator which, although a tad buggy, was really cool. Now, let's talk handling. This thing was obviously pretty slow in all regards of movement, be it turning or accelerating, but that's kinda what you sign up for when building an aircraft carrier. Originality wise, this thing was actually a surprisingly common build that was entered to the competition. So unfortunately, it isn't going to score too many marks here. Overall, for Dead Accurate's final score, they received a 9 in design, a 9 in difficulty, a 5 in handling, and a 3 in originality. Next up is Adrian's ship, the Lady Poopoo. Now, don't let the name fool you. This ship was really slick, quick, and all about business. Design-wise, I'm a big fan of boats with sails, so I was really pleased to see a boat like this one in the competition. The only small problem I had with the boat is that the area under the deck did feel a little cramped to move around. Difficulty-wise, this boat looked pretty tough to build, with a block count nearing around 1800, yet still keeping the nice design intact. It was impressive. Handling wise, this boat did handle quite well. It was pretty quick at moving and turning, although there were a few mishaps where the boat leaned too hard into a turn and ended up sideways. For originality, this thing looked totally custom, and that's something I love to see. Overall, for Adrian's final score, they received a 8 in design, a 7 in difficulty, an 8 in handling, and a 10 in originality. Next up is Cheetah Prancer's cruise ship, the Oasis of the Seas. a stylish cruise ship with a few little rides. Design-wise, this boat took a huge advantage of nighttime. With the way that Cheetah added lights, it made the boat stand out and definitely looked pretty cool at night. My one critique, however, is that inside the boat was pretty barren, and I would have loved to see more things in there, like an engine room or even more cabins for guests. As for difficulty, this boat was quite interesting. With a block count nearing around 4,000, the ship looked pretty good overall. However, it did seem to have a small problem taking on water in the lower sections of the boat. For handling, this boat didn't move too much. Now, full transparency, it was pretty laggy, and I'm sure that probably affected it, but it never really went anywhere too quickly. For originality, however, this boat seemed to be another total custom. Overall, for Cheetah's final score, they received a 9 in design, a 6 in difficulty, a 4 in handling, and a 9 in originality. Next up is the biggest build in the competition, TJ.exe's Mega Cargo Ship. This boat was huge, and it took 4 different accounts for it to come together. Design-wise, this boat was actually relatively simplistic, since there wasn't much detail inside the boat or in the control tower. However, the huge size of it was definitely something to note. As for difficulty, this boat seemed really hard to make, and required a lot of coordination to get the whole 13,000 block ship to actually fit together. For handling, this boat didn't move at all, sadly. For originality, however, I had never seen someone enter the competition with something created over 4 different accounts. Overall, for TJ.exe's final score, they received a 7 in design, a 10 in difficulty, a 0 in handling, and a 10 in originality. Next up, the most deadly build in the competition, Hyperbit's USS Montana. This boat was so cool to look at. The paint job was beautiful, and really matched the idea of an oceanic sort of camouflage. Design-wise, this boat was really impressive, both inside and out, and I had no real major criticisms for it. As for difficulty, this boat seemed really hard to make, and required a lot of attention to small details to get the boat's 6,000 block self to look so nice. For handling, this boat was relatively quick, when lag was not a factor. For originality, this boat was obviously inspired by the real-life USS Montana, but I still think the way that Hyperbit did it was really cool. Overall, for Hyperbit's final score, they received a 10 in design, a 10 in difficulty, a 7 in handling, and a 7 in originality. Next up is Captain Oppo, with their ship, the Oppo Tanic. This boat was quite large, with a ton of little rooms tucked away inside of it. Design-wise, this boat felt a little too plain, and I would have loved to see maybe a little more color in the build as a whole. As for difficulty, this boat seemed on the outside a little simpler than some of the other boats. However, it was still made up of over 7,000 blocks. For handling, it moved pretty slow, and combined with some of the lag that it generated itself, it also made it look even slower. For originality, this boat was obviously inspired by the Titanic, but I think it was taken in a totally new and creative way. Overall, for Captain Oppo's final score, they received a 6 in design, a 7 in difficulty, a 5 in handling, and a 9 in originality. Next up is Daneblox, with their ship, the Flying Dutchman. This boat was quite large, detailed, and really well put together. Design-wise, this boat looked perfect. It matched the aesthetic of the real Flying Dutchman so well. As for difficulty, this boat took what could have been a simple build and cranked it up to 11 by adding cannons that actually came out of the sides of the boat, as well as a giant one that actually emerges from the front. For handling, it moved relatively quick, and turned with no problems at all. For originality, this boat was obviously inspired by the Flying Dutchman, but it was executed in plain crazy style so well. Overall, for Dane Blox's final score, they received a 10 in design, a 10 in difficulty, a 9 in handling, and a 9 in originality. Next up is Herb Tenmom's ship, Marceau. This boat was a really nice looking battleship. Design wise, this boat looked really good, and the rotating guns were a nice touch. As for difficulty, this boat looked really tough, and for being as big as it is, I found it impressive that all the small details look really good from far away. For handling, it was pretty above average all around, and for originality, this boat was really creative and detailed, although I do believe I've seen a ship like this in a game before, but I can't put my finger on it. Overall, for Herb's final score, they received a 10 in design, an 8 in difficulty, a 7 in handling, and a 9 in originality. Last but not least is Gwen's cargo ship. This boat was a really solid looking boat all around. Design wise, this boat looked really good, but I felt it really needed something to add just a little more to it. As for difficulty, this boat looked relatively tough, and the fact it had a working operational lifeboat was pretty cool. Handling wise, it handled really well and was just a little bit slow on the turning. For originality, this boat was a little simple, but the addition of the lifeboat did bring something new to the table. Overall, for Gwen's final score, they received a 7 in design, a 7 in difficulty, a 7 in handling, and a 7 in originality. Before we get to the winners, I would like to thank the almost 100 people who submitted their builds to this competition. That was way more submissions than I ever thought I would get, and now I can't wait for the next one. To all the finalists, thank you for coming out to the recording sessions and making this video possible. Even if you don't make top 3 this time, there will be more competitions in the future, so keep an eye out. I also wanted to say that I never really had to use the originality score for a tiebreaker, so it kinda turned out useless for this video, but oh well. So, without further ado, let me present to you your 3 winners. In third place, with a score of 25, Herb Tenmom, with his ship, Marceau. In second place is Hyperbit, and the USS Montana, with a score of 27. And in first place, with a final score of 29, we have Dane Blox, with the Flying Dutchman. So, there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed the video. To the competitors, I hope you enjoyed competing, and I hope that I get to do another competition again in the future. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. If you guys liked this video, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, guys, it's Dragon Platinum, signing out. Peace out, guys. Bye.